Hello, everyone. I am recording still from Colombia, so the quality of my sound isn't incredible at the moment. I don't have everything that I do normally have when I am recording episodes. So if the sound isn't phenomenal, just know that's because I am somewhere up in the mountains, still making sure that I bring you great content. And today I'm in the company of an incredible human, Lucy Clementson, who is in the UK right now.
Yeah, I'm in the sunny UK.
Sunny UK. And she's also a life coach. She is specifically a career coach, and she helps people get clarity, confidence, joy, and fulfillment back in their career and life again. So for all of you who know you're not doing what you're supposed to, but you also don't know how to get to, this is the kind of coach that you need in your life. She was previously an HR director, and she's also a yoga teacher. Oh my God. And she is an Ayurveda nutritionist and performance coach. And she is here right now in this episode to help us discover how Ayurveda.
Yeah, you got it. Ayurveda.
Ayurveda. This word is a word that is going to cost me. Okay. It's a type of medicine, right? And I'll let you explain to us what it is. But how does knowing your type, according to this science, like your personality traits, what that fall under this type of medicine has or helps you connect to yourself better. And Lucy actually uses this to help her clients when they're making career choices or changes. But for the purpose of this episode, we want you to learn about Ayurveda medicine and the different types of personalities. Is that what you would say?
Yeah. I'll talk a bit about them. Yeah, the different kind. We call it doshas in Ayurveda, but yeah, the different personalities is a great way to explain it.
Okay, so you can identify yourself and maybe learn a little bit more about who you are and how can you best help yourself. All right, the floor is all yours, Lucy.
Oh no, thanks for having me. And
thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. And when I was I was thinking about what would be really helpful for your listeners and talking about the mindset, but also the reason I thought about Ayurveda. So if I just say a bit about what Ayurveda is, and also as a career coach, it might seem strange I'm talking about Ayurveda, but as you said, I was trained, I was an HR director, and I changed my career totally and retrained to be a yoga teacher and also an Ayurveda nutritionist and lifestyle consultant. So I've kind of got this HR background. I was also a coach and all this holistic qualifications. I brought it all together, and that's where I do my career and life coaching. And I pull on these different tools because when I'm working with the high achievers that I really help coach, a lot of them are where I was in my career, where they're feeling stuck, lost, not really sure what to do next at crossroads in life and in their career. And one of the things that's so interesting when we get to that point, and I've been here, maybe some of your listeners can identify with this, when you're at that point, you've kind of lost who you are. You don't really remember who you are, what it is that makes you, what you enjoy anymore. You've kind of just gone with the motions and you've fallen into this job and you're not happy, but you're so exhausted, you haven't really got the time to think, what do I want and who am I anymore? And I think you add on top of that, a lot of times we become parents, you kind of get this identification as a parent and you've kind of really lost yourself. So Ayurveda is something that I learned totally separate because I had an interest. But when I started doing my life coaching and my career coaching, I could see how helpful as a tool it was to really help my clients get to understand who they are, what makes them them, why is it that they're not happy in their career, and what kind of career would make them happy, what fulfills them, what does success look like to them. So that's how I use Ayurveda, even though that's not as traditional kind of how we use it in the world. That's how I've brought it into my coaching. So that's kind of the link between my Ayurveda background and my current role as a career coach. And Ayurveda is ultimately it's a healing system. So like you said, medicinal, but it's a healing system from India. It's over 5,000 years old. And it's a Sanskrit term. So Aya actually means life, and Veda is its wisdom. So it's ultimately the wisdom of life. That's what it translates as. But if we think about it, Ayurveda today is all about how we can understand we've got different mind-body types. So if it helps people understand that if you've ever done a Myers-Briggs profiling or an insights profiling at work, we kind of end up with different types. I kind of like to think of it as a holistic personality way we can look at it. So you can understand your own type, but using Ayurveda. And ultimately, what we're trying to do with Ayurveda is achieve optimal health by balancing our mind and our body and our soul. And that's why I really wanted to talk about it, because the mind is so important in this. And we can really understand how we're all different mentally and how we can actually use that as one of our strengths rather than it being a weakness. So hopefully that explains a little bit about what Ayurveda is.
Yeah, I love that you call it a healing system versus a medicine. And the wisdom of life. How beautiful is that? I love it.
Yeah.
So I'll break it down into what, so now we know what it is. I love that you brought up having done personality tests at work. I think that many of us have a clear, or not many, this doesn't happen everywhere, but it should. We have a better idea of who we are, our personality traits. And so how is it helpful to understand within this healing system then our energy, or like, what is it that they called it again?
So it's called the dosha. So what we have in Ayurveda is we break it, and I've tried to keep it quite as a snapshot, really, for the sake of trying to fit it in a podcast, because I can go on and on. But in Ayurveda, we have something called the doshas. There's 3 doshas. And ultimately, this is what makes us up. So there's 3 doshas, and we have all 3 within us, but you will have a certain amount of olga within you, and I'll be very different. And that's why we behave different, think different, look different. So it really starts to get us to understand that. So I'm just going to give a snapshot today. When I'm coaching people, I have a full questionnaire, but I'm just going to give some of the typical traits of these 3 doshas. And as I'm going through it, you might start to identify and be like, I can really see it. I'm predominantly that type. So these doshas are like energies. And you might just find that there's one that you particularly identify with, or there might be 2, or you might be that you can see all 3 within you. So for me, there's 2 that really show up, but I've still got the 3rd one within me, just a very small amount. So if I just give an overview of the 3 doshas, and then hopefully you can your listeners will start to be able to see where they might identify. So the first one is Vata, V-A-T-A. And this energy, Vata, is ultimately, if you think about Vata person, they would be quite thin and quite a light frame. So physically, they'd be quite slight, maybe have thin lips, thin hair, quite dry skin, small eyes, even things like cracking joints, cold hands and feet. So like maybe always have like those cold extremities. There's also a lot of movement. So if people are watching this, they'll see I've got a lot of Vata. I use my hands a lot. I talk quickly. I also walk quickly. So Vatas tend to be quite quick as well, quick-witted, quick thinking. And as a result of that, they're quite active, but they can have that restless mind. So you can already start to see if you think quite quickly, you might start to have a bit of a restless mind. It might make you a bit indecisive, and you can't really sit still. So I always joke that if you've got a Vata person, they'll have a million tabs open on their computer and they haven't done anything with one of them. You know, that's a typical
bad Amy then.
Yeah. And kind of not just physically, but also we think about how we are with the body. So Vatas can be prone to bloating, constipation. They can be quite light sleepers. They're also quite creative, very imaginative, and we'll come on to the mind in a minute. But Vatas tend to be your dreamers. They can really have that vision and think into the future. They can also worry a lot, and that means they can retreat. So when they're anxious, it might mean they retreat into themselves. They can have trouble finishing things, and they've got quite a nervous energy as well. And when we think about Vata people, they can be aggravated by the cold, by windy weather, and by irregular routines. So like if they go traveling and they're in a different time zone, things like that can really aggravate a Vata. And I'll talk a bit about that later, but that's kind of a Vata. So as I go through it, maybe there's, like you said, Olga, there's a few
I'm
things.
starting to see myself in Vata, but maybe.
Yes, I'll tell you about the other 2. So Pitta, P-I-T-T-A, like a Pitta bread, Pitta. So if you've got more of the Pitta energy, you tend to be more of a medium build, so a bit more of a muscular build. And you may have more warmer skin. You might have freckles, red hair. So you can probably, if you're watching us, see that I've got Pitta in me with freckles and red hair. Pittas tend to be, as people, they tend to be quite motivational. So they kind of got that energy, like a leadership energy. So if you think in a work capacity, maybe there's been a leader that you've worked for, and they have an ability to get people on board and get excited about a project. They enjoy challenges. They can also, the other side of that, they don't really know when to switch off. So they might work late into the night. They might have some of those perfectionist tendencies to be a bit critical of themselves, of others, because they're really ambitious. And that means they can get quite frustrated, quite irritable, a bit impatient. They might be jealous and also competitive. The other side of that is that they do really enjoy challenges. They've also got really strong appetites, but they can be really aggravated by heat. And when I mean heat, it's not just like the food, weather, but also things like stress, alcohol, things like that can really aggravate a pitta. And that can also lead to things like skin conditions like acne, psoriasis. So where there's heat in the body, how it comes out. So they can overheat a lot as well. So that's your pittas. And then we come on to the last one. So they're called kaphas, but it's spelled Kapha, but we say kapha, almost like it's F's. Kapha. Yeah. And kaphas tend to have a larger frame, so they may be prone to getting overweight. Their skin can be quite oily and very smooth. Their hair tends to be really lustrous, maybe like nice big curly hair, nice thick nails, full lustrous lips. So that's all your kaphas, how they physically may look. They also have slower digestion, and they might also emotionally eat and oversleep, which tends to then relate to why they could be prone to becoming overweight. So when we think about kaphas, they're very content, very grounded individuals. They're very slow and steady. So they'll get the job done, but they'll do it in their own pace. So very slow, very calm. The other side of that is because of that, they can get prone to being sad. They might procrastinate. They might be stubborn. They can be a bit possessive of things or hoard things, and they find it hard to speak up for themselves. And they can also be aggravated by the cold and also by too little variety. Because they don't like to put themselves out there, they don't have as much variety, and then that can also cause them to come out of balance. So hopefully that explains a bit about the three doshas, and just an overview. Like I said, I could go into a lot more detail, but that's just an overview. And even as I'm going through it, you might be like, I can see where I am, or God, that's so my partner or my children or my parents. You know, we tend to identify with it. And like I said, you might find that you're predominantly one, or that you've got all three, or maybe there's two. So for me, I've got a lot of pitta and quite a lot of vata and hardly any kapha. So how that might show up is that as a pitta, I can get things done. I'm really ambitious, but I have to be very mindful because I will tend to work, and I have to learn how to switch off. And if I don't, that vata energy also increases. Then I'll start to get anxious and I won't sleep at night. And so it's like a vicious circle. And if I had some more of that kapha, that more calm and grounded, that would be really good for me. So I have to put more energy and effort into bringing that into my life because it doesn't come as naturally to me.
So people listening to us, like they've identified as having more or one, like now what? So they're like, yeah, you described me here, now what?
Yeah. So when I'm doing a full consultation, I would be talking a lot about kind of different lifestyle things, lifestyle tips, tools, nutrition, all of that help bring you back to balance. But what I thought would be really helpful, if I just explain a bit about each of them, how it might show up from a mindset point of view, because often when we come out of balance, it can show up with how we are mentally thinking and behaving. Mm-hmm. And I've got a tip today that I thought I'd share that about how you can come back into balance. So if you think about a vata, you remember I said a vata person can be really creative, really intuitive, and also they can understand, they can think into the future. So another thing with vatas is they can learn really quickly. But the other thing is they forget really quickly. So I always talk about when I was reading Harry Potter, I could read it like in days. Like I read it so quickly, but I also forgot a lot of it really quickly. Whereas my husband, having more of the kapha tendency, he read it quite slowly, which irritated me because of my pitta. I'm like, come on, read it. But he remembers all of it. Yeah. So this is how we show up. And the reason I want to share is about vata, because when a vata is out of balance, so if you did identify as a vata or having a lot of that energy, you might find that when you're out of balance, so maybe you have been working too much, maybe you have had irregular routines, maybe you've been out in the cold, maybe you've been eating foods that make you feel more bloated, you can get really agitated. But when that vata energy is really high, you might also notice you feel more anxious, more fearful. You kind of have excessive speed and thought, so you can't almost catch up with yourself. Your mind's racing into loads of different scenarios. And then you can also, on the other hand, feel really isolated or lonely or insecure, and you're trying to do too many things at once. So your nervous system is ultimately just really overstimulated. So the main thing, if you're identifying as a vata, the main thing you can do to balance that, if you identify that, is to bring calmness in, to bring more groundness into your life. And a really easy way to do that is through routine. And one of the things I'll share with you, Olga, I don't know if you can share it with your listeners or pop it with the podcast, is I've written out an idea of what a daily routine could look like. And it's not about sticking to every single hour, but it is just about where you can bring some of that calmness in, and especially a night routine, because vatas tend to struggle with sleep. So whether that's getting to sleep, or maybe it's waking up in the night and then not being able to get back to sleep. So one of the things I really help my clients with is actually starting to get a routine, because that really calms that nervous system that's already over heightened and just allows it to come back to a more calm place. And I share grounding yoga practices, also the food foods we eat, so grounding food, so having food that's from the earth. So, you know, depending on where your listeners are listening from, but at the moment in the UK, you know, a lot of the sweet potatoes, things that come from the ground, carrots, parsnips, things that are in season, and having those grounding foods. And also because Vatas get very bloated and get constipated, we don't want things that aggravate that. So dry foods are one of the worst things. So we want warm, oily foods like soups, dals, stews. So nice, warm, grounding food is going to really help calm a Vata, and also learning to say no, because Vatas tend to worry what they think of me. So we tend to overbook ourselves. So again, having that routine, really having ourselves to be grounded and calm is the best thing you can do for Vata, not overstimulate ourselves, not watching terrible things late at night on the TV. You know, we really want to bring some calmness in, and the evening routine is the key one, because that's going to help you get the best night's sleep and then wake up and be able to actually manage having a routine, because you're not exhausted and just then you eat whatever, and then you start to, you know, you haven't got that purpose and that what's the best way to describe it, almost you haven't got that intention about how you're going to have your day, because you've woken up just exhausted and you just want to get through the day.
Yeah, I love that. And you definitely described me. And I have noticed that having a night routine, for example, without any electronics and not watching TV, not even, I used to just watch comedies. Now I realize just no screens is best for me, so that I can be, and I personally give myself a couple of hours to start unwinding, so that my brain starts thinking oh, we're going to bed.
Brilliant.
So I definitely side with that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting food with that. That's cool.
Yeah. And even things like that, that's perfect. If you're switching off a few hours before, so you can start to get your body to know, because we have the doshas also come into the times of the day, which I didn't think I'd bring in today. But just, the kapha time is 6 till 10 o'clock at night. So the energy of kapha, if you think, when I've explained what a kapha person's like, more heavy, the energy of kapha time is heavy on purpose to get us ready for bed. But what we do is we put on screens and all these lights, and we've woken ourselves back up. So when we come into the pitta time, which is 10 o'clock at night till 2 in the morning, we almost get that second wind. We're like, oh, I'm awake again. And then it's really hard to switch off. So it's about having intention of going, no, I'm going to use what nature's given us. I'm going to use that quiet time of day, in the heavy time of day, to get ready for bed, and in bed before 10 ideally. So I'm ready to get a good night's sleep. And that's why we use that energy as well. So for Vatas, the biggest thing is, routine, especially nighttime routine as well. And then what they eat can make such a difference if you are noticing that you're coming out of balance.
So what happens when somebody might be Vata but experiencing a slower digestion and heavier weight? Could there be a crossover, and how does that work? Right? There might be somebody who's Vata, but they're but I'm not skinny, so I don't know why they're calling me Vata, that they might, you said, all the energies can be in one body.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have all three within us. Everyone's got that, but in different various amounts. So when I do the full consultation, I would really look at their physical, how they are physically, how they are mentally, emotionally. So I kind of break it down. So you might identify that actually physically. So physically for me, I am very pitta. I've got more of a muscular build. I've got the red hair, the freckles. Physically, if you looked at me, you'd be like, yeah, she's a pitta. But mentally, I'm more Vata. And so it can show up in different ways. So if somebody maybe identify that they've got more of a medium build, so maybe more pitta, but they are more prone to maybe some of that sluggishness, or maybe feeling a bit lazy or stubborn, some of those kapha traits, it's because they've got both of those. So you can just have predominantly one, but you might have a mixture of all three or two of them. So when we think about that, that's why it might be showing up. But also we have the doshas present themselves at different times of year. So in the UK, we're now coming into kapha season. So springtime is kapha season in the UK. And that means, again, there's a lot of the rain, the ground's really moist, there's a lot of that water. So there's a lot of that heaviness. So again, this is why we get a lot of colds, a lot of congestion. Loads of the kids are ill at the moment, because we're in that kapha time of year. So it might be that even if you're predominantly Vata, you will maybe notice that you're feeling a bit more sluggish in the kapha time of year, because it's just the energy that we've got in nature. So it's not always just about what's within you. And I wasn't going to go into that because they can get really vast, but it's just, you understand. Yeah, absolutely. You might identify predominantly as one, but those other two are still there. And if you are predominantly one of them, so let's talk about pitta. The pitta season is summer. If you think about the heat of pitta. So if I'm a high pitta and I'm in the pitta season, when it's already really, really hot, it's going to heighten my pitta. So I might get more irritable. I might get more angry. I might get more frustrated, and I might want to work even harder. So I have to learn how to balance that. So for me, that would be things like not going out in the midday sun for a run, not working late at night, not saying yes to too many things because I want to be perfect and get everything done. So it's just about, again, understanding more about who you are and how you can come back to balance for you. So you absolutely might identify as somebody who's got some of the vata and some of the kapha traits. So it's just about learning what foods to eat, what routines to do and not do, what lifestyle tips will work for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I can see how somebody who's never heard about this might be like, what is going on here? How does that even? And I think it's fascinating. If anything, we're just piquing people's interest to just go and research this a little bit more.
Yeah.
What I love is the connection to nature, right? And so understanding why you might be more prone to depression at winter, more angry during summer, and like just sort of understanding what does nature is providing you and how can you complement what is not. That seems to be a bit
Yeah. And I think also, absolutely, with working with nature, I think if you again think about, I've talked a bit about that pitta kind of feeling angry, feeling impatient, and then with kapha, how it can show up is maybe feeling lazy. So if you think about this time of year, kaphas can feel a bit lazy, a bit lethargic, a bit complacent. So if we're in the kapha season, that's why maybe we do find it a bit harder to get out of bed in the morning, and it's dark and it's cold and I don't really want to go and do exercise. But also then the other side of that is the knock-on effect that will have on us, not just physically, maybe putting on a bit of weight, just not feeling great about ourselves, but then also mentally, we might just feel a bit more sad at this time of year. We might feel a bit depressed and we're like, that's not like me. It's because, again, in nature, there's more of that energy. But if you are somebody who's got more of that kapha within you, you're going to feel that even more. So for me, not having much kapha, it doesn't affect me as much. But when you hear about some people like who have, and then I can't remember, is it sad when they have to be in the sunshine? They're like, I can't, I'm in the sun, if I'm in the cold for too long, it really affects me. And it's a genuine thing because they need that sunshine, they need that heat to feel at their best. So it's again just understanding yourself. But when we think about how that can show up for us mentally, I just want to share that there's also, I'm talking about some of the like things like maybe that aren't so good about each energy, but also there's so many good things. If you're a vata, you're really creative, you're really intuitive. So understanding mentally, I might show up as more anxious and fearful, but because of that, I also, when I'm in balance, I can be more creative than maybe some others can. And I can also be really intuitive and I can think really big picture. And if I'm a pitta, it might be that maybe I can be impatient and I can get frustrated, but also mentally, I'm really confident. I'm actually really intelligent. I'm really enthusiastic. I've got a really sharp memory. So again, how can I use that to my advantage? And if I'm a kapha and I do tend to be a bit more complacent and lethargic, I'm also really compassionate and loyal and patient. And so again, how can I use that to my advantage? Because I remember things. I don't, talk about the Harry Potter example, like my husband remembers everything. Kaphas are amazing at that. They remember everything. So each one's kind of got its pros and cons, but it's about how we can tap in to all the strengths of each of the doshas and use them to our advantage rather than it being a problem.
Love it. I absolutely love this. So, okay. So where do we take them from here? So they've identified themselves as like, what will this knowledge do? Where can they, like, what can they walk away with other than like, I'm clear on that. I definitely am a big mix between Vata and Pitta. Because I definitely have like that muscular build, but also I'm highly motivated and like, I like to get things done and get it done. And the Vata is that creative big picture. Like I've got that. Kapha, I realized that's probably what I've got the least amount. And so sometimes I can't relate to people who are sad in winter. I'm like, but why?
Yeah.
Why is that? So then what do I do with this knowledge about myself?
Okay. So if there's a few things with this. So how I would use it in my coaching, like I said, I really use it to get people to help them understand who they are. So sometimes people will come to me and they're just like, I just don't understand why I can't get on board with this or why I don't understand this. And so it's like, it's because of who you are and how you're made up. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but it might take you more energy to get to that. So like we do with Myers-Briggs profiling or insights profiling, the more you get to understand yourself, you understand your strengths, you understand what you're really good at. and the areas that maybe take more effort. So like you said, Olga, you haven't got much of the kapha, so you might find it maybe a bit more hard to be patient with somebody because you've got a lot of that pitta energy. So if you're going into whether it's a working environment or maybe it's a relationship, and there's somebody who's got a lot of that kapha energy, and you want to get a win-win from it, and you want to work with that person, if you're going in there bulldozing with a pitta energy, that's going to be very overwhelming for a kapha. They're going to find that they're going to be very standoffish. The stubbornness will come out. I'm not going to work with her. So it's again understanding that and going, okay, how can I get the best from this? Because I know that I tend to have this very energetic, loud energy that might really put them off. So you can use it in a work environment like that and understanding yourself. But for you personally as well, the reason I talk about Ayurveda a lot and how I would use it more in a health way is if you notice you're coming out of balance, like I said, some of the things we'll talk about Vata when I said, you might get bloated, you might get constipated, you might, if you're pitta, you might have skin complaints. If you're kapha, you might start to get overweight, or you might start to retreat or get lazy or lethargic. It's about understanding what brings you back to balance for you. So the first thing is you'd really want to do a full consultation to get to understand your actual, I've given you a snapshot today, but you'd really want to know. So when I do it, I always come out about 60% pitta, 30% vata and 10% kapha. No matter what questionnaire I do, that tends to be my constitution. So once you've worked out your constitution, and there's loads of free quizzes online, there's some fantastic ones. But once you understand that constitution and what you come out as, if you know your predominant one, so I'm just going to presume it's pitta for this because I know that for me, you're going to understand, okay, I know I'm going to have a tendency to overwork. I know that about myself now. So what can I do? If I'm starting to feel out of balance, how will that present itself? I'm going to maybe get really angry with people. My skin's going to start to break out. I'm going to overheat at night. I'm going to maybe yell at people when I don't mean to. So you start to understand how that can show up. And then you can learn what brings you back to balance. So for a pitta, foods, you don't want heating foods, spicy foods. You don't want things that are going to add more heat because like increases like. So if I'm already hot, I don't want hot foods. I don't want alcohol. I don't want to go in the midday sun. I'm not going to go and put myself in a sauna. Anything that brings more heat, even being in an environment with competitive people, might be that aggressive people, an argument or people that you have arguments with. You want to make sure you're around calming people. You want to make sure that you're eating cooling foods like salads, cucumbers, drinking water. You want to make sure that you're getting to bed before 10 because that's clear for pitta. They really start to get that second wind if they stay up too late, and then they've got the energy to keep going, and then they're not sleeping, and that will make them more irritable and more angry. So it's about cooling, basically for pitta, we want to cool them. And also routine. It's called dinacharya in Ayurveda. It's about having a good routine. Best things for pitta, you want to be cooling from the clothes you wear, like cool colors like whites and blues and greens. So swimming outdoors, going for walks in nature by a lake, especially, that's really cooling. Being around your kaphas, being around your vatas, the people who are inspiring and more calm. So anything that invites that calmness and cooling for pitta can really help bring them back to balance. If they're noticing they're starting to get some of those complaints, like feeling too hot, like the skin complaints, like feeling angry all the time. And for myself, when I was in my previous role, I knew I was out of balance, even though I didn't really know about Ayurveda then, because all of those things were happening. I was having breakout in my skin. I was just feeling really cross with everyone. And I could feel the anger in me sometimes. I'd actually feel that heat rising up when they say you feel angry. I could feel that in me, that short temper. So I knew something was wrong. But once I started to understand Ayurveda, I was like, I've just come out of balance. I've got a lot of pitta in me. That's how I get angry. And now I can work out how to cool that down, how to come back to balance. And you can do that for vata and for kapha as well.
So really the point of this energy medicine is to come back to balance, whenever it is that you have left to balance, come back to balance.
Absolutely. And what's balance for you? So it's not about having 33.3% of each of these. It's about, once you know your constitution, so you remember I said I'm normally about 60% pitta. So balance for me looks like I am going to have a lot more pitta because just how I am physically. So I'm not going to be able to change that, but it's knowing because of that, coming back to balance for me is I'm more prone to go out of balance on my pitta side. And so how do I calm that pitta? If I come out of balance on the vata side, how do I calm that? So for me, the vata, like I said earlier, I'm not so much physically vata, but I'm very mentally vata. So I can worry, I can get anxious. So when that happens, the biggest thing for me, I know I'm out of balance when I'm vata. Those things present itself. And as soon as I look at my routine and as soon as I address my nighttime routine and I get sleep, it changes. It's a game changer for me. I can get bloated quite a lot. So again, I notice how I've been eating things like crackers and crisps and dry cereal, because I hate milk, so I always have dry cereal. And if I've been eating all those drying foods, my stomach is bloated. I feel uncomfortable. So as soon as I again start to have warm, oily food, like the soups, like the stews, like the dals, straight away, I start to notice I'm not bloated, I'm not constipated, I'm just feeling a lot better in myself. And then also along with the sleep, I'm really starting to just feel more calm and more relaxed. So again, it's just noticing it's all little things. And the thing with Ayurveda, it's very much about empowering you. So it's simple lifestyle changes. It's not about going to have to get lots of medicine. It's about just making changes to empower you to look after your own health and your own well-being. You don't need to go and see all these different doctors. If you look after yourself, it's preventative. It's about just living well, eating well, thinking well, and that keeps you in balance.
That sounds very attractive to me.
Yeah.
And I think for the listeners, maybe you're just realizing, I think there's something relieving about being like, oh, it's just that I am a kapha, or it's just that I'm a pitta mostly, like then you realize like there is half the planet whom I feel how I feel, whom I struggle with what I struggle. I think that's kind of cool as well when you take personality tests, or when you do this kind of, when you hear this kind of concepts and you're like, oh, I get it. It's not just me. Sometimes we think like we're the only one who's always bloated. And you're right. When I drink soups, I feel like $1,000,000.
Yeah. And I think it's almost like the penny drops. I remember when I first, I had a yoga retreat a year or two ago, and I did the questionnaire on everyone who came, and then I explained to them what the results meant. And so many of them were just like, oh my God, like that makes sense. And also not only that for me, my partner's, he's really kapha and I'm really, no wonder we wind each other up on this, or no wonder this is where we really connect. So it just helps you, again, like I said, from how I use it in my coaching, is to get to understand yourself even better. And that's what it's really helping you to do. And on top of that, it can empower you to live well, to feel well, but to also have better relationships, whether that's in work, personally, and even like from a career point of view. If you're somebody who's got a lot of that Vata energy and you're naturally quite a worrier and quite anxious and you're overthinking and you're thinking, say, about maybe going self-employed, just being aware of that and going, okay, so if you don't know if you've got any income for the next year that's guaranteed, are you going to be okay with that? Because you are somebody who's more prone to worrying. So again, if I'm working with somebody, I'll be like, okay, so let's just talk about that. How might that show up for you? So it's just, again, it's another way of understanding who we are, but not in a way that there's a problem. It's like all these strengths you've got are fantastic.
It gives you more information, more tools. Yes, love it. Yeah. Lucy, so how do people get a hold of you? What will you help them? If somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, I want to know more about me, and maybe they're not thinking of a career change, or also a life coach, but this is like the meat and bones of what you rule your practice with, or how does it work? Like once a person comes in to see you, is this the first step that you will take with them just to figure it out energetic they're at?
It's not the first thing, but it would be quite early on. So when I work with people who tend to work with me are feeling, like I said earlier, they're normally at that crossroads. They're thinking, what's next? I'm feeling stuck, whether that's in career or in their life, and just starting to think, what else could I be doing? What's different? Like I said, it might not be a career change. It might be that they're just not happy at work, or it might be something outside of work. But that's the people I tend to work with. And where I'm really helping them is to get clarity. What is it you want? And to do that, we really have to rediscover who we are and then what we truly want. And then I help them get the confidence to go after that. So ultimately, they're getting more joy, more fulfillment back in their career and in their life again. So Ayurveda is one of the tools I'd use quite early on to get them to start to understand who they are, along with understanding their values. What are their strengths? What are their skills? What's important to them? What does success look like? Because we tend to forget that, or we've just gone through the motions. We've not really asked ourselves, hang on, I've had a lot of changes in my life. Maybe I've become a parent. Maybe I've gone through a massive change. Maybe I've lost somebody. Maybe I've moved countries, whatever it might be. We go through big events and we don't then question, how have I changed? Is this still what I want? Is this still important to me? Whether that's my career, relationship, anything going on in my life. So I really get them to look at where they are now, where they want to be. What is it you really want? And sometimes it's a really hard question when we've not looked at that. So all of these tools I use, including Ayurveda, is let's get to understand ourselves really clearly. And in Ayurveda, I talk very much about how are you today? How have you always been, but how are you today? Because again, you might be out of balance. So it might be, I've always been a Vata. Like you look at me physically, mentally, I'm a Vata. vata, but I'm so out of balance. My pitta has gone through the roof because I'm now in a different country, because I've been through a really stressful situation, because this has happened, so life events happen and I use it to get them to understand more about where they are right now.
Very holistic. All right. So how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So if people want to get hold of me, so it's all my name, which is a mouthful. It's Lucy Clementson-Mills. It's all one word. And that's my website. So www.lucyclementsonmills.co.uk. I'm in the UK. And then I'm on Instagram, mainly on Instagram and LinkedIn. And again, it's just my full name, all one word, Lucy Clementson-Mills. And that's the best way to get hold of me. And yeah, I'm on there all the time. And that's how I help all my clients through those links as well.
I love it. You're also a nutritionist. So that's interesting. Like how you mixed all of this. I love it.
Yeah.
It shows the bada in you, how creative you are.
It is fun to bring it all together. And I think also for me, I did it for myself personally, really, the nutrition, because I just had an interest, and for my children, I was just keen to understand, what foods to produce and cook and all of that. But it has been really helpful for my clients, because when we go through the Ayurveda questionnaire, some of them do say, actually, I do want to look at my nutrition because I know it's impacting my happiness, it's impacting my health, it's impacting my well-being, and I'm just not feeling myself. So to be able to bring that in is just an extra thing that I can offer, which is just, such a joy.
Yeah, you're like a one-stop shop. Love it. So everybody head over to the show notes. You get you have all the links that Lucy has provided us where you can get a hold of her. And Lucy, one last question. Do you work one-on-one with people?
Yes, one-on-one. Yeah. One-on-one. It's a 12-week program in my coaching where I bring all of this together. So one-to-one.
Oh, I love it. Love it. So first of all, thank you so much. I needed to hear this today, and I'm going to switch into soups, although I'm pretty sure it's a soup that made me feel really bloated.
Oh no, yeah. Maybe there was too much potato in it.
Yes, that's exactly what my mother said. She's like, there were too many potatoes and now you're really bloated. And I feel like it's taking all of my vital energy to digest the soup that I had yesterday for lunch.
So the best thing with that is dal, like rice and just maybe some carrots or just red lentils. Just keep it really simple.
Oh my God, lentils. That just... It's not what my body wants.
In a dal, I promise. I can send you a recipe, I promise. It's a good one.
My God, I love this. Thank you. And then I noticed my pita going off the handle because I don't feel that well. So and I think this is so interesting for people to hear, because it's true. Like, although I feel like I might be mostly vata, but definitely with pita, the moment the digestion goes wrong, like I get more irritated more easily and more like on edge because it doesn't feel right. In the body.
They're out of balance.
Yeah. Lucy, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Every conversation I've had with you is so easy to have. You're such a lovely human. And I am so excited that all the people who are listening to us got to hear some of your wisdom and how you have combined all of your gifts into like this beautiful 12-week package where people can just get to pick your brain and go from point A to point B. I love how you get them unstuck by understanding themselves at a much deeper level, not just mentally, but energetically, and even looking at nutrition. I think that holistic approach is always the best approach.
Yeah, thank you. And just to say to any of your listeners, if they've listened to this and they're like, I just don't understand Ayurveda, there was a little bit left, feel free to message me through Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm always happy to answer any questions. If there's anything from this that I just want to understand it a bit more, I'm always happy to answer those as well. It's true.
It's not new to me. So I feel that maybe I didn't ask enough detailed questions because I'm like, yeah, I get it. But for people who are listening for this to the first time, I understand how you might still have some questions and like trying to figure yourself out. So reach out to Lucy, ask her questions, maybe even consider doing this for, what do you have to lose? 3 months of coaching.
3 months of coaching, yeah. And I do consultation calls. So again, so just bang in my studio. I do consultation. So people again are interested and they want to find out more. We can hop on a call. I can tell them more. They can tell me what's going on with them and see if coaching's a good fit for them or not. And I'm always happy to have those calls and, like I said, answer any questions. If it's about Ayurveda, about the coaching, yoga, any of it.
All of it. I love it. Thank you, Lucy. This is super fun. Everybody head over to Lucy's right now. This is what you need to do. Get to know yourself a little bit better. Thank you so much for listening. If you think somebody else needs to listen to this episode, by all means, share it. If you loved it, let me know. Give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the podcast. Download it. Send us a message. I can only bring you more guest speakers if you guys let me know what you really love. All right. See you next Monday.